It started. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Collins. I am the Communications Coordinator for the Office for Peace and Justice, and welcome to the 5th installment of Hashtag Project CST's live webcast on Catholic social teaching. And before we jump into everything, I want to say that we're talking about solidarity tonight. We've talked about dignity of human life. We've talked about dignity and rights of workers. We've talked about community. We've talked about all kinds of things. And this week, we're talking about solidarity. And so I want to run through and just do a quick introduction of everyone, and then we'll really get into who we are interviewing tonight. So first, we have Joanna Arellano. She is our... Go ahead and tell them what you do.
Hi, I'm Ashley's co-worker at the Office for Peace and Justice at the Archdiocese of Chicago. I am the program coordinator for Catholic Relief Services and the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. In short, my role is to help implement these programs in the Archdiocese on the parish and school level. And with CRS, we do that through CRS Rice Bowl during Lent, Fair Trade, and Advocacy. With CCHD, we organize money in the Archdiocese to fund organizations that empower low-income persons to address institutional change. In short.
In short, it's big work, and she does an amazing job. We also have Miss Jennifer Betz here. Jennifer, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Jen Betz, and I am a relationship manager for Catholic Relief Services, the Midwest office, which is located in Chicago. And I have the pleasure of working with wonderful people like Joanna. So I work with both diocesan staff and staff at students at colleges and universities to help Catholics in the U.S. and people of good faith goodwill to live their faith in solidarity. So what does that mean? It means we try to organize educational opportunities for them and also opportunities for action. So Joanna mentioned some of the things, which is advocacy, fair trade. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And of course, we've got the rest of Team Hashtag Project CST. Bethany, what?
Yes, I am one of the social communications interns, and I'm Bethany. That's pretty much it.
She's our tweeter and for during the live webcast, and then we've got Brianna.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm also one of the OPJ interns, and I'll be running this thing.
Oh, well, excuse me.
No, I'm just asking the question.
So, okay, so before we get into all of the goods, I want to throw out what the church says about solidarity. And this comes from Solicitudo Rei Socialis. Says, solidarity is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortunes of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it is a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good. That is to say, to the good of all and of each individual, because we are really responsible for all. So, that's one of the quotes from what the church has to say about solidarity. And so now we have Joanna and Jennifer here to kind of break that down and say, you know, what does that mean for us? What does that mean in general? So I'm going to turn it over to Brianna, and she's going to start firing away some questions. So
I really need your help, guys. I don't understand what solidarity is. Can you maybe explain what it is, and maybe for the audience who don't understand what solidarity means, just explain and like why we should be involved or why it relates to us now.
Shoot for Jennifer first.
Sure. I like to think of solidarity, something that helps me understand it is I think of it as love of neighbors. So not just only love of neighbor, but I think of it as pushing us as Christians to kind of constantly expand our definition of who is our neighbor and become more and more inclusive in that. And I think that it is based both in I like to think of it as the both and, that we're called to do the works of mercy, but we're also called to look at social and economic structures and to try to work for a world in which everyone can thrive and not only survive. So making sure that we're working for just structures in our society.
That's beautiful.
That's dead on.
I like the concept of all you do is really add an S, just
Mm-hmm.
to break it open a little bit more.
Yeah.
We've talked about the human dignity of each individual. We've talked about living in community, local communities, and now this is making it a global aspect.
Just Jen had a beautiful explanation, but the way I understand solidarity is recognizing that we're all made in God's image and likeness, and that as Christians we carry the responsibility to love our neighbor, as Jen mentioned, and neighbors beyond the local community and the global world, and doing things that help those just structures.
Great. Awesome.
And I think something I'll chime in, because I also like what Joanna said.
This is why we do it with lots of people.
With lots of people. Because I think the other part of it is I think both, the idea is that people's lives are transformed, but I think we ourselves are also transformed. Because solidarity, in its essence, is really about relationships. It's about really knowing people and understanding the needs, human needs, and then working to make sure everyone is able to meet those needs.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add to that, Jen, because I love what you said, it also has to be in greater awareness of ourselves and our place in the world and how we are as Christians, and to understand our responsibility as global citizens.
And I want to add on top of that, the whole being able to thrive. I kind of want to reiterate. I kind of say it, I think every week I've said it about now. But one of the reasons that we do work on these social changes is so that people can thrive and be able to live in the freedom to be able to have a relationship with Christ. If they're being put down, if they're being suppressed, or they can't get what they need, God is the last thing on their mind. Food is the next thing on their mind. So all of this is to basically help everyone be able to have the freedom to have a relationship with Christ. Anyone, all over the world. Solidarity.
Yes.
Everybody answer yes.
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 Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Brianna before anything else happens.
Thank you both, Joanna and Jen. Well, you both work for CRS, Catholic Relief Services. So can you tell us why you decided to do this kind of work, or what basically drawn you to Catholic Relief Services?
Do I need to flip a coin?
Sure. Well, I think probably the first part of my journey, it's definitely been a journey. It's a continuous journey, but I think I had a story, and then later on my journey, I found CRS. But if it's okay if I start with a story.
Stories are great.
Stories are great. Okay. When I was in college, I was volunteering for a summer at a shelter for people who are homeless. And we had space for families, and we had a family come in, and it was a mother, and she had 3 children. There was a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a baby. And I quickly realized that the only way that I could communicate with the mother, because at this point in time I didn't speak Spanish, was actually through the 5-year-old. He was the interpreter for the whole family. And it really just opened my eyes in that way of understanding, like, wow, this family is here, and I want to understand why they're here. And, it was in South Dakota, why they're in South Dakota, what brought them on this journey. And it really kind of forced me to look at migration and what causes people to migrate, and do people have a right to migrate? Do people have a right not to migrate if they would like to stay in their home places? And so it was actually, I think for me, that was kind of one of the first experiences where I kind of began to see the world like in terms of neighbors, like a wider understanding of what was happening in our society. And so then my path kind of led me through subsequent studies and journeys into Catholic Relief Services.
Awesome.
That's great. So my story, I think, starts with my mother. I grew up in Little Village, which is a neighborhood in the south side of Chicago. It's a low-income immigrant neighborhood, and my mother was always involved in the community and very involved in her union, and always dragged us along, no matter if we were 4 or 5 years old, into these actions to always better the community, and that she always rooted this this sense of justice for the community and for those who couldn't act. And so growing up, that was just my lens for the world, and in college getting more involved in social justice in the church, and it just opened my eyes when I was able to study abroad. And I had the blessing of being the CRS intern for the Archdiocese, and that progressed to program coordinator. So
I also ended up with Catholic Relief Services because of an internship during my master's program. So yes, those can be very good.
yeah.
What keeps you working now? What drives you still?
I love it. I love being part of an organization. As you all know, Catholic Relief Services is part of the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the fact that I get to work for our Catholic family, and it's in doing the work of solidarity all across the globe to people who are oftentimes in situations of extreme vulnerability. And the people that I work with are awesome because they're passionate and they're committed. And CRS has 5,000 staff around the world, and 4,500 of those are national staff. And they're some of the most amazing people I've ever met because they are really doing this because they really do want to see the world become a better place for all. As you said in the definition, we have a responsibility for all, and I feel like my coworkers really understand that. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place to work.
What about your coworkers?
I'd have to echo Jim. I love my coworkers. That's definitely one of the highlights of my job. Yeah, to echo Jen on several levels, I was fortunate to experience the solidarity and the action that CRS has abroad when we took a diocesan delegation to Rwanda, and it opened my eyes to how incredible the work of CRS is changing lives and communities, and knowing the staff that works here in the U.S. and how animated they are to really have change in the world. It just impresses me, and I love it, and I have a huge heart for fair trade, so I feel like
huge heart.
Yay! I love, and actually I'm just totally going to put this in because I got the chance to, but like we always want people, like especially here Catholics in the U.S., like we really want them to feel like when we say CRS that they can say like my CRS, like it's our organization as Catholics in the U.S.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing that you brought up Rwanda, Joanna. I was wondering if you would be able to talk about it as a CRS director of the diocese. That's what you. I'm saying that right.
Diocesan director.
Yeah, diocesan director.
There's a lot to say about my trip to Rwanda, and when I came back, people would just be like, "Oh, how was it?" And I mean, in short, I could just say it was all transforming and life-changing. But the goal of our trip was to visit a number of CRS projects that CRS is working closely with, and I think, all of them touched my heart, especially with the history that Rwanda has with the genocide. But one in particular, we went to a rural village, and CRS had helped this community build kitchen gardens for a community that largely had most of their community members infected with HIV/AIDS. And some of those members were just excluded from the community, and these kitchen gardens were a way for them to come together and to have a better diet, to work together, to just really live as a community. And I was just blown away by how many lives were transformed by this on many levels.
Jen, can you speak a little on like the more institutional work that CRS does like this, like what she experienced in Rwanda?
Yes, I can try.
Sure.
One thing that we really try to do is work through partners. Mm-hmm. So that's incredibly important to us, is to work through the local local organizations, especially the Catholic Church, on the ground, because well, one, it's a great principle of the principle of subsidiarity, which I bet you're going to get to in a future broadcast, which is, of course, that the people who are closest to the problem are going to be the ones who come up with the best solutions. And we also want to make these, I mean, we want to help empower organizations, local organizations, to be as strong as they can. And so we work a lot with Caritas. So I don't actually particularly know in Rwanda, but my guess is that we do work with Caritas Rwanda. Catholic Relief Services is actually the Caritas of the U.S. It just has a different name. So in case you hear that in other places. So working through partners for us is incredibly important. They teach us a lot. We learn so much from them, and they're just great. Every once in a while, we may have to implement if it's an emergency or something like that, but our goal is always to work through local partners, especially the local Catholic partners. And another thing that we try to do, which I think Joanna alluded to too, is we use a framework called integral human development. And it's kind of getting to what you were talking about, Ashley. It's helping people not just survive, but really thrive. And it's looking at all aspects of development. And so when we are thinking through how we're going to develop projects and how they're implemented, we always kind of have that in the back of our heads to help guide us in our work.
Awesome. Yeah. Speaking of emergencies, we've kind of got an emergency going on now, where as Catholics, as humans, we can practice this Catholic social teaching of solidarity, and the fact that there's so much violence going on over in Iraq right now. And you had mentioned to us before we got online that you had actually spoken with someone kind of on the ground over there. Can you give us an update? I mean,
I did. Sure. Yes.
Yes.
We want as many people to know as we can, but I did speak with a colleague today, and she was just letting me know the situation is dire. It is a humanitarian crisis, and tens of thousands of families have been uprooted due to circumstances beyond their control. So everything that you're hearing about in the news is very much happening. We are working very closely with Caritas Iraq, actually. Though they too have been affected in some locations by the violence. Right now, our response has been humanitarian, just meeting the needs on the ground. So it looks, the families that are coming, they really don't have anything. They're coming with the clothes on their back. So right now, it's a lot of distributions of food and water and basic shelter, blankets, mattresses, soap, things that can help them get clean. Families are sleeping on the ground. They're sleeping in abandoned buildings and homes, and often places where there might not be any means for sanitation. I do want to raise that the local Iraqi population in Erbil has been phenomenal, and they have been welcoming these tens of thousands of internally displaced people coming, and they've been bringing them water and bringing them home-cooked meals. And really just giving absolutely, I mean, just true expressions of solidarity are happening in Iraq. But of course, the violence is continuing. We've been able to serve about 3,500 families in Nineveh, but we're hopeful to serve at least 30,000 people. And we may expand that depending on what's going on in the ground and the amount of other resources that we can find here. So thank you for asking, because we would ask everyone to keep Iraqis in their prayers.
Definitely.
Well, Jennifer, if I may ask, how can we express solidarity with those displaced families? How can we here or anywhere in the world, how can we help those families?
Solidarity, is it okay if I ask, is it solidarity more in general, or solidarity specifically with the Iraqi people?
Right now with the Iraqi people, and then we'll move on to the in general afterwards.
Sure. A lot of times in CRS we actually use these letters, and it's PLAGUE. It's pray, learn, act, and give. And so, I mean, I think that that would just be a great thing to keep in mind. I mean, I think prayer vigils are needed. If prayers for the Middle East could be included, of course, in Prayers of the Faithful on Sunday. That's a huge help, or any other larger vigils. I think learning about the situation is incredibly important in the larger context of what's happening in Iraq and in the Middle East. we often encourage people to do advocacy. We don't have a specific action alert yet on Iraq, but the idea is always that we are in dialogue with decision makers in the U.S. For what's happening in U.S. foreign policy. And then, of course, giving. We are actually, if people want to give, they could go to crs.org in order to make donations for the Iraqi crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to speak more about advocacy in a more general context, too, if that is, whenever there's a good time for that.
Yeah, I think that was a follow-up question, Brown, right?
Okay.
Yes, that was
great. So we have a network. I think a lot of times, I think one of the most significant things that ever happened to me in my life was I was actually in Chile. I was a volunteer in Chile in 2003. And the war, of course, had just broken out in Iraq. And I remember a Chilean woman, she came up to me after church, and she said to me, and we were friends. I mean, this wasn't, and she came up to me and she said, Jen, she said, what are you doing here? And I realized what she was saying is there's a lot to be done in the U.S. too, especially as far as foreign policy goes. And so something that we're always hoping that people in the U.S. realize is that you have incredible power as a U.S. citizen to make your voice heard. And we have a network of people called Catholics Confront Global Poverty, and it was started with help from the USCCB. And it's looking to try to shape U.S. foreign policy in ways that really keep the poor and the vulnerable at the forefront of decision making. So like right now we have action alerts on the humanitarian crisis on the U.S.-Mexico border with unaccompanied children. We have an action alert, of course, on the crisis and what's going on in Gaza and Israel-Palestine. And so we're kind of constantly encouraging people to please make your voice heard. Please do district visits. Go see your representative. Go see your senator. Write them letters. Call them. Visit them. But your voice is just so much more powerful than I think oftentimes we even realize in the U.S. that we, by virtue of the fact that we're here, that we can make our voices heard to decision makers.
Yeah. Do you have something? How can we continue living?
Yeah, I mean, to add to what Jen was saying in regards to fair trade, because that's how I live my life, or try to live my life. I think it's this awareness of understanding the weight of your purchasing power and how to live in a way that's responsibly every day with the things that we consume, whether it's our clothing, the coffee we drink, the sugar we put in our coffee, the rice, I mean, olive oil, it's everything. And choosing to buy fair trade products so that the person producing those products is being paid a fair wage. And for those in Chicago, I would encourage you to join Chicago Fair Trade, to be a part of a movement, a citywide movement to make Chicago a sweat-free city, meaning that any garments that city officials use or city workers aren't sourced from sweatshops on a more institutional level. And then obviously would just be praying to keeping the Iraqi families, those displaced, and also the families and individuals in the Central African Republic that are suffering as well, and West Africa. So praying at the foundation always.
We've got a retreat coming up.
Fair Trade Retreat, yeah. October 11th, we have a Fair Trade Retreat scheduled at Madison, Wisconsin with Just Coffee Cooperative. And we'll be visiting them, having a coffee cupping, explaining the fair trade process, visiting some parishes that also do social justice, and just exploring Madison and the fair trade stores that they have.
That'll be on our website, by the way. So make sure you check it out. Links at the bottom, as usual. So, awesome. Actually, we're kind of time to wrap up. Anything else you guys, ladies, want to throw out there? Jen?
I just want to say thank you. It's been wonderful to be with you all and talk. It's exciting to talk about solidarity. Like, this is something we should talk about all the time, and it's awesome to have an opportunity to do it all the time. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the webcast. You've been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon in Chicago.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon in Chicago.
Yes. See you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
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 And I think that's about it. We got one more next week. We're going to be talking to Kayla Jacobs. She was last week, if you remember. We're going to be talking about care for Korean as one of the tenets of Catholic teaching. So I'm super excited about that. Bethany, Brianna, you guys, ladies, ready? Good?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good.
Awesome. All right, Brianna, you want to take us out?
I will. Just thank you all for joining us, and this has been Catholic social teaching for your everyday life.
Oh, you have to strike a pose.
Oh.
Yeah, strike a pose. There we go.
Come on, Jen.
Good, Jen. There we go. Now.